Welcome to the MIT Innovation Program podcast. This is a repository of insights by thought leaders and practitioners of innovation where they speak about their views, insights, and experiences. Come join us.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Driving Innovation in Your Life and Career. I'm pleased to introduce our guest speaker and innovator, Ms. Parvathi Menon, Managing Director of Innovation Alchemy Consulting Pvt.Ltd. and Founder CEO of Fresh Harvest Pvt.Ltd. Parvathi has followed an unconventional career path, making conscious choices to pursue challenges that leveraged her passion for effective business management, strategy, and teaching. She is a serial entrepreneur, having set up her first business venture in film production when she was just out of university. Thereafter, a 10-year stint in the corporate world to learn business management, and in 2009, she set up a successful consulting practice to focus on social innovation. Under Parvathi's leadership, her team delivered large projects for the World Bank, Bloomberg Philanthropies, and the Marico Innovation Foundation, amongst others. In 2014, she set up an agri-business and decided to venture into the difficult sector of farming and horticulture, opting to become a farmer to try and establish a model for financially viable small-scale farming. Parvathi is on the board for the School for Social Entrepreneurs in India, a program supported by PwC, which has a focus on building social entrepreneur leaders across multiple domains. She is a specialist facilitator with Harvard Business Publishing, moderating courses on strategy innovation, change management, and leadership excellence for business leaders across India, Southeast Asia, and the Middle East. She runs both the consulting practice and the agri-business, working across Bangalore and the neighboring district of Krishnagiri in Tamil Nadu, where her farm unit is located. And her passion is to create a bridge between real strategy, learning, teaching, and practice. Parvathi has a master's in communication from Hyderabad University and is an alumni of the management program for women entrepreneurs from IIM Bangalore. She is actively involved in mentoring entrepreneurs in the early stages of enterprise development. So before we proceed to listen to Parvathi, I have a few updates to share about the session and the MIT ID Innovation Program webinar platform. For those who are joining us for the first time today, I'd like to inform you that MIT stands for the 4-decade-old Maharashtra Institute of Technology. ID stands for MIT's 15-year-old Pioneering Institute of Design. MIT ID's one-year innovation program focuses on the 4 pillars of design, business, technology, humanities. The key features and differentiators of this one-year course are immersions, project-based learning, and humanities. So on behalf of Professor Harshit Desai, head of the innovation program, and the core team, we are grateful to be amongst you all hosting the session today. Today's webinar will have our guest speaker share her insights for the first half hour, followed by questions facilitated by me in the latter half hour. Please do read the chat for other important pointers that have been shared. This is our 23rd industry interaction this season, and I, Priya Dhawan, Head of Collaborations, Branding and Outreach for the MIT ID Innovation Program, welcome you all once again to this thoughtfully curated innovation journey. Warm welcome once again, Parvathi. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Priya, and appreciate being invited to this platform to be able to engage with the community of innovators, entrepreneurs, students, and others that MIT has brought together over the last 4 decades. It's always exciting to be able to share, but more importantly, to learn from what people exchange in these kinds of interactions. And so I truly appreciate the opportunity to be able to join you all today. I have also the added opportunity to talk about a subject that increasingly is something that I'm thinking a lot about and reflecting a lot on. While we have spent a lot of time talking about innovation in the business sphere, how do we innovate in the context of a company? How do we innovate in the context of products and services and business? How do we innovate in our lives and in our careers? And as Priya and I were chatting about today's session, it became so so interesting to sort of context it into where we are today. The world is changing dramatically. We are all part of a global lockdown for the first time ever, at least in our memory and lives. What was considered something that you would add on to, such as e-learning, has now become suddenly center focus for all learning and organizations. Everyone is working remotely and using these tools. There is news that perhaps a lot of companies might even decide that they are not going to be opening offices again. Everybody will work offline. I mean, there's very rapid change happening. What does the future of work look like in this kind of a scenario? And because I have the opportunity to work with entrepreneurs, I find that perhaps that's one of the reasons that the thought stays in my mind a lot more. This is really the opportunity, I think, for a lot of people who are professionals in a particular journey in their career to identify a new leap for themselves and different approach, a different journey perhaps, and a different level for themselves. It's also an opportunity for a lot of people who are perhaps have spent 15, 20 years in their career to start thinking, can I be an entrepreneur? Can I join in this wave that's going to happen in India over the next 2 decades about Make in India? How do I get myself involved in that? How do I apply my learning to that? And as we were talking about it, I think those are the thoughts in my mind. And I said, all right, okay, let's spend a little bit of time today talking about innovation as an essential life skill. How do you use that as a life skill, build it? How do you apply that as an approach to both your life and your career? Not taking it in the business context, but taking it in the context of your own career. Unfortunately, because of this online method, I'm unable to see many of you, but I'm hoping that we'll still find ways to engage, and Priya is going to moderate a Q&A and a conversation once I am done. But at any point of time, just to jot down questions. I'd love to hear from you and be able to engage further, not only through this platform hereafter through social media as well. And so as we move forward, let me take the a quick gist of what I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to try and context some of the reflections that I have around some personal stories. I'm going to try and connect those dots and reflect for all of us together. Some of you may relate to that, many of you may not, but if you don't relate to it, I'd love to hear your alternative thoughts on that, because that will help me learn from you as well. And then I will try and share a few essential frameworks that have emerged for me personally as I have built out my career. I find that a lot of this has also been important for me to reflect on, especially over the last 2-3 years. My son, was an undergrad over the last 3 years. He's just graduated in May. And as he started building his career out, I know that as a mother and, just being very involved and wanting, to be able to share as much of learning with him, had an opportunity to talk to him at multiple times. And I think some of this has emerged just in terms of connecting the dots for him. And hopefully that could be useful for all of us to discuss as well. But let me start by taking a step back and reiterating what innovation is. There's a lot of definitions out there. Because I spend so much time in the domain and in the thematic of innovation, I've increasingly, I increasingly see that as a very simple concept. It is about creating new value. It's not about creating something new or inventing something new. It's about creating new value. If no value is created at the end of having done a fantastic product or a great service, or having spent your time and effort, if no real value is created, value for others, value for yourself, one has to ask ourselves, have we really innovated? So innovation is about creating value more than for yourself, for others in the ecosystem, perhaps for other stakeholders. If you're in a business, then definitely top line, bottom line, all of those metrics. It's about creating new value. It's about creating something different that has an impact. Scott Anthony, who heads InnoSight, which was set up by Clayton Christensen, and he really started to define innovation and the innovator's dilemma And we lost Clayton Christensen recently, and it's amazing how much we have all in the innovation space learned from him. But Scott defines it as something different that has an impact. And I think that's a very valuable way to define innovation. It's not only something new, it's something different, it's new, but it has an impact. So it's creating new value, it's creating impact. If impact is not created, we will not be able to call it innovation. I'm just putting out a little bit of a context for today's conversation. This lovely book called The Little Black Book notes, innovation is a process that combines discovering an opportunity, blueprinting an idea to seize that particular opportunity, and implementing that idea to achieve results. Remember, no impact, no innovation. So for innovation to be measured, for innovation to have happened, for it to be recognized, remember we're talking about impact. And when we take a step back and we say, okay, how do we innovate in life and career? It's truly to be able to ask ourselves, what impact did I intend to create? What value did I intend to create? And have I been able to create that value? But that happens over a period of time. And so I'm going to take a few steps back and perhaps share some of those reflections as I came along. So that is me. My current business and passion and something that keeps me awake at night and makes me dream through the day is agriculture. I'm in the deep end of agriculture. I chose not to just become an intermediary or to lease land or to try my hand. I said, I'm going to get into the deep end. I'm going to try and set up a farm. I will set up a small-sized farm, a mid-sized farm that could be an example for other urban farmers who want to be able to move to farming but don't know if it's a viable business model as yet. And I have been now working on this project for about the last 5 years. It's only in the last year that I have to say that something valuable has started to emerge. There have been many points in this journey over the last 5 years when I have thought to myself, oh my God, this is just more than I can handle. I can't do this. This is far beyond what I had thought farming is. We get charmed by the romance of organic farming. There are a lot of people who come to our farm and say, I've heard so much about organic farming. I know that it's therapeutic. I know that I'm at a point in my career when I'm burnt out. I want to do organic farming. And I want to tell them that, yes, that's a beautiful, romantic, nice thought, but farming is one of the most difficult, most complicated business there is, because there's very little in your control. And I have found that the beauty of the farm environment is very often a large part of that romance. I mean, these are some shots from my farm. It's beautiful weather. It's, this is just before the monsoon set in this time. We're growing these fabulous fruits and vegetables, and you can see that there is a certain charm to the output that you're creating. And I want to just remind ourselves that underlying all of this charm is the reality of what's happening. I am not a pure science student. Physics or mechanical engineering or electrical engineering, none of those were really my subjects. But I have never applied as much physics in my life as I've done in the last 2-3 years. I've learned to be a plumber. I've learned to be an electrician. Every day, something in the irrigation breaks down. Just last week, we had a major issue with the hydraulics of the tractor that seemed to almost get a life of its own. The tractor almost toppled over. We had to find a way to be able to put it back. I have to sit down with the forger very often to try and design new ways to be able to do some things faster, and therefore I need to be using a design head. You'll see that this visual of our roses, I grow scent roses, which are perfume damask roses. We have harvested a lot. The markets have been closing and opening and closing and opening. All of this produce went into the market and none of it got picked up that day. And in fact, our crates lay in the market without it getting picked up. So I'm having to handle market as well. I'm just trying to share with you that the romance of farming is a beautiful visual, and we see a lot of that. But really what underlies a lot of it is very hardcore, everyday practices of the basics of mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, design thinking, market management, business management, as well as production. And all of these combined together in order to be able to make this particular kind of a business run. But how did I arrive here, and was this where I started? In order to do that, I want to just take us back to a philosophy, and some of it I think evolves from just a lot of Stoic philosophy, from Stoicism. Richard Feynman says, fall in love with some activity and do it. Nobody ever figures out what life is all about, and it really doesn't matter. Explore the world. Nearly everything is really interesting if you go deeply enough into it. Work as hard, as much as you want to, or the things that you like to do best. Don't think about what you want to be, but what you want to do. Keep up some kind of a minimum with other things so that society doesn't stop you from doing anything at all, right? And I know that this is counterintuitive in many ways to the cultural framework of work. You must do something that is productive. You must do something that will earn you a life. You must do something that will help you build your career and your life and all those goals. But I have to say that I have met many young people who've come in for interviews into my consulting organization or into the agriculture organization, engineers from some of the best colleges, MBA degrees from some of the best colleges. And in the conversation with them, innumerable of them have said, I sat in my engineering class, and on the third day, I knew that this is not what I wanted to do. It's not what I wanted to do, but I still had to finish. I had to finish my engineering degree and then get on. And I'm sure many of us know people who are chemical engineers, but are also the best filmmakers, who did mechanical engineering, but also went on to do something in advertising, or left it and went into medical. So there is something about what we do, but what we love to do. And there's a slight difference in that. And I want to keep that as a thought as we move forward. Before we do, I want to just open up a quick poll. I'm going to request Priya to please help me manage that. It would be great, because I can't see much of the audience here, but it would be great to get a sense of where many of you are. Are you just starting out? Are you a student? Are you a fresh graduate getting into a career? Are you a working professional right now, early with a few years of work ex, or are someone with many more years than that? Are you an entrepreneur? What's our group like today? Just for me to get a sense. I think the third, 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth option can possibly be more than 20. So if you're more than 20 years, then please pick the penultimate option, working professional with 20 years, work ex. Okay, so as people go through this, just quickly select one that describes you the best, and Priya will help me get a sense of what our results are on that. So there we have it. I think everybody will be able to see it. It's a great mixture. We have students, fresh graduates. That's about good 30% there. Working professionals. There are several who have more than I think about 10 years of experience, which is the last option there, and about 35% entrepreneurs. I'm really excited to see that. It's a great mix. So I'm hoping that we are able to have a conversation at the end of some of the pieces, some of the frameworks that I share, because I'd love to hear from you where some of you might get stuck in innovating on your career, and I think that's the objective of this approach. Let me take you back now to some reflection and some stories, and we learn together from here. So when I started out, and I want to go back to college. My father was very keen, of course, like many fathers of their generation, that his daughter be an engineer. A science student, and my battle started on that even as early as the 11th grade. I was not sure that that's what I wanted to do, but I was almost more sure that that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to perhaps be learning, reading literature and history and political science and father was very keen that it has to be engineering. And as many of you who are perhaps, 15, 20 years of experience, have parents in that generation, will know that there was very little that you could debate. You moved on and you got into whatever. But so he said science, and 11th and 12th, I did, pure science, physics, chemistry, maths, biology, all of that, computer science. And it was a struggle for me. It was a struggle for me. And I was not used to that. It's something that I had to get my mind used to. I was used to doing well in my subjects. I was used to doing, leading things in class. And here I was struggling to try and get these very complex mathematical formula, because it was just not who I was. And they were difficult years because I really had to struggle to get myself through it. And when the results were coming out, I knew already in the pit of my stomach that this was not going to go well, and I managed to, of course, get a decent percentage, but I was left feeling very disappointed with myself. And I remember having a big conversation with my dad at that point and saying, this is not what I want to do. And so he said, well, all right, okay, let's take a compromise. Let's do architecture. Let's do something related to science. And he was very keen about that. But by that time, the only thing that had happened in my mind was the clarity that that was not what I wanted to do. And I didn't know what else I wanted to do. And my father, being the kind parent he is, he said, well, all right, okay, let's devise a plan. We will travel. We will go. I will identify a few colleges. It will be a college that you like, and perhaps a course that I like. Let's go out and see what's there. And so those are the days before the internet. We traveled. I loved the college in Ajmer, Sophia College. I said, this is what I will do. Whatever is available over here. One seat was available in home science. I said, that's fine. I will do it. And I started. So the reason I'm taking you through this little bit of a story is that I think many of us face this challenge. It just seems to me when I meet young people who are finishing up their student life, many of them are at the point saying, I've finished this, but I don't know what I really want to do next. And I think I was at that stage. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I was clear what I didn't want to do. And I think that was a big lesson for me. And I'm really glad I stood up at that point of time and made that decision. And home science, while the subject itself was fascinating for me, any subject would have been fascinating if it was not difficult trigonometry or maths. And this was exciting. I learned so much. I engaged with people. I engaged with my peers in class. I engaged with the world outside. And recently, just 2 or 3 weeks ago, in fact, an old classmate of mine sent me, our annual, the year we were passing out, leaf from that book. And I suddenly remember there was like so much that we had been able to achieve. I passed out as the all-round outgoing student of the year in debate and elocution. I got the shield for 3 years running for dramatics, and I got a scholarship for further studies. I had done well, and that was what I was used to doing. I had a sense of achievement, but more importantly, I had actually identified at the end of this process that I was perhaps good at communication. I had the ability to apply communication, and that this journey taught me the fact that there is an opportunity to apply communication to it. The reason, again, I'm highlighting some of this is because I want you to see that this journey is not one of clarity, which starts and says, okay, I know exactly what I want to do. And like many of us, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And it took me a little bit of time to fill that out. As I have grown through that journey, I joined in communication. I did my master's from the Hyderabad University, and I mastered in communication with a specialization in film, TV, development communication. As I did that, not only did I enjoy the skill of doing it, I was starting to work and starting to apply some of that skill. But applying the skill by itself seemed suboptimal to me. So once you've learned a skill, so what? So how do you apply that skill? And I was starting to think in my mind, what do I really want to do with this skill of communication? And so I decided that it was a good idea to start thinking about where to apply it. And I think I'm not sure I found the inspiration. Finding the inspiration took a few years, but I eventually started my first company. It was a small film unit. We would bring people together. Nobody would really hire us because we were very fresh out of college. We would work for anything. If people gave us a biryani at the end of making a film, we would we happily work for them. Basically, the idea was just give us opportunity to practice our skill and start to think about where we want to apply it. It's a small group of entrepreneurs. That was a fantastic experience because it started to again tell me that I enjoyed the business end of creativity far more than the pure creative, expression alone. And as I reflected on that experience, as I battled through many different projects, that reflection became clearer and clearer and clearer. The inspiration that I found in that journey was actually, so what I really want to do is business. And I enjoy being able to take an idea to a client, convince the client, get them to agree, get them to sign a check, give us a project. I love being able to raise business. So you can, it's interesting how that evolved, but I decided that's what I wanted to do. I had two options. I could either jump into an MBA or I could, jump into an organization and see what needs to be applied. And it was fascinating because the internet was just opening in Bangalore at that point of time. Microland was hiring. They were willing to hire people with very little experience in technology. And that was me. I had no experience in technology, but I had experience in communication. And so I could translate communication as a skill into a new application area. I went into web design. But what I really wanted to learn there was business. How does a startup organization build a business? And this was the startup 101 time in India. It was brilliant. And it gave me the scope and the room to be able to grow within the organization because I knew how to lead people. I was already leading a small unit of people in my film unit. I knew how to do that. It quickly grew. But what I was doing was being able to polish the art of business as I evolved in it and I grew in it. But soon enough, the question again came back to me that what do I do with this skill? So with communication, how do I apply it? But now with business, how do I apply it? And you will not believe it, but it took me almost 4 years to be able to search and find a purpose to apply my passion to. I enjoyed communication and I loved it as a skill and a tool. I loved being able to translate that into business. But how do I translate business into the next thing? What problem can I solve? And that led me through multiple different projects. I will share one example with you just to link you with how that purpose became clearer. As I was trying to figure out what I should do next with business, I was working in the innovation space. I started up with the startup area, naturally linked into innovation. A lot of what we were creating was very innovative. How do innovative teams work? How do innovative leaders work? And I started applying some of this thinking to the emerging market. In one company that I was working with, which was a telecom company, they were looking to do new product solutions for rural India. And interestingly, a lot of my work eventually was rural India. So, how do we create phone telephony in rural India? And I'm working with a group of young, engineers, very, very proficient in the fields that they are in. They have been tasked to come up with innovative patents that the company can then use to be able to create the products for rural India. We are trying to sit together and find insight that can give us the lever for innovation. As we did that, I decided the groups will go out and they will talk to people in the markets where they want to design products for. So a group of people, young engineers would go out, they would talk to villagers. If you've ever been to a rural area, you will know that if you go to talk to one person, the whole village comes together. The whole village came together. Nobody was trying to, the questions were very interesting. How can I help you with a mobile phone? How can telecommunications help you in your everyday life? But the response from the people in the village was, well, we don't have water. We don't have electricity. There are not enough schools over here. Every time they asked questions about what product they wanted to build, the responses that came back were the challenges that the people had. And as we sat down and did a manthan of these data and facts and learning, the engineers were saying, well, we're not finding, customers are not telling us what we really should be producing, which is the point of innovation, right? You never get in a silver platter what you need to do. You have to really find that insight. And so we said, okay, let's go out again. And soon enough, as you go deeper and deeper into this insight process, they reached a village, which was maybe about 100 kilometers further from where they had been going. And they were very curious to see that here the villagers didn't really talk about their challenges. They said, oh, you know what, we have managed to build a school. We actually have found a way to be able to raise money from some of the water facilities by changing the irrigation method. We've actually set up a solar unit that gives power back to the grid. We have generated funds and we are doing. And the group was very surprised. They said, wow, everybody else was complaining, but this group seems to have a very interesting difference. What is happening over here? This particular village was not on the scheme of receiving water for some more years, and that was expected to be delayed. As a result, the group had found, the village had discovered that they will do their own solutions. It was very interesting for the group of engineers. The insight that they gleaned out of this entire exercise was that there was so much internal best practice that could be shared within these villages that they could perhaps create tools for, not just get focused on telephony as a simple solution. From this emerged 5 or 6 patents the company filed that particular year, because the team was now convinced about a new range of products that they could create. This is the power in my mind of insight-linked innovation. And when, as a result of some of these examples, it started becoming clear to me that in India, if we want to work on innovation, it has to be in meaningful ways. There is so much to solve in a country our size: water, health, electricity, sanitation, women's health, maternal health. There are so many challenges, renewable energy. How can we, all of us with so much experience, be applying our energy of innovation to that? And that slowly and steadily became my purpose. The reason, again, I'm taking you through some of this is to just share that the answers are not always sitting clear in front of us. And one needs a certain sense of seeking of inspiration in order to be able to derive from that the power that can help you actually be able to innovate. So the question for all of us, as we are looking at innovation in that extent, is you see the beauty of the final outcome. You see, all right, okay, so here's someone who's being able to live at a farm, or here's someone who's running a really successful company where they have got so many innovative products, and or his or her company has just raised 50 million from an investor, etc., etc. As we study some of those journeys, I think it's very valuable for us to really ask ourselves, what were their reflections? What choices did they make? Why did they make those choices? To be able to glean out from that the jewels of innovation learning that we need to be able to apply in our lives. So let me just put it all together into what is sort of an emerging framework for me when I think of designing a career or taking forward your passion or pursuit, any of these things. And I think this is in that sense perhaps suitable for any kind of venture that you want to do. The first step, it seems to me, emerges very clearly, is to seek inspiration. Sometimes you wake up and you have that inspiration, you're clear what you want to do, but if that's not who you are, and that isn't me. Hi, I'm sorry, I think I may have gotten lost. Priya, can you confirm that you can hear me now?
Yes, audible. The poll is on.
Poll is on, great, all right. Should I share my screen once again?
Yes, please.
Okay, it seems to be shared, but I will share it once again. My apologies, I'm not sure what happened in that drop. So here's where we were, and the poll is open. Thanks for that, Priya. They've closed the poll as well. So let's just keep the poll results on. I want to take a moment to walk through some of these, and then we will spend some time in discussing this. So seeking inspiration, do you find it? Do you have to seek it? Having done that, I have found personally not to wait for anyone else to invest in prototyping. If I think an idea is worthwhile, I won't try and convince anyone else. I will implement the prototype, whether it is trying out what I should do with the farm, whether it is defining that I wanted to set up a consulting business and be able to go out and find my first client to do that. I invested very consciously in the IIM Women's Entrepreneur Program when I decided that I wanted to set up my next business. Very conscious decisions, but investing in prototyping I find as a very valuable approach if you can set that up for yourself. Having invested in a few prototypes, it's important to commit to implementation. Not just have a host of ideas that you really like and enjoy and you can talk about, but implementing one or two is very, very crucial. And that's really where the results come. There have been many times, and I'm sure many of the experienced people on our group today will share the same thought that you wake up and you say, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? But you go on another day because you have committed to implementation. And then it's very important to reflect on the outcomes, not just the positives, but a lot of the negatives. So as we, one of the reasons I wanted to quickly check on this is, where do we all as a group tend to find the maximum challenge? I find it most difficult to be able to narrow down the inspiration to something tangible. And that happens in prototyping. And that only happens when I can prototype a lot. So as I can see in the results here, you find it challenging to invest in prototyping. I will be curious to know why, what the challenge there is when we open up in Q&A. Keep your thoughts there because I'd love to hear on that. Why is it challenging to commit to implementation? Or do you feel you have too many ideas and therefore to commit to one is difficult, or to commit to one and stay focused on it long enough is difficult? Which of these is it? So keep that thought in your mind and do share it as we move forward into the Q&A. Let me take a moment to just 1 or 2 moments to be able to share some of the tools that work for me a lot. If you are someone who's worked in the innovation space, these are tools we use a lot in the context of business innovation. How do you use them in the context of personal innovation? A network. It is unbelievable how valuable good mentors can be in your career and in your path of innovation. I think good mentors have been one of the most valuable connects that I've ever made. People I respect, people who are far ahead in the journey, who I've been able to approach and say, would you be able to spend a little time with me, maybe once a month, an hour? Can I come to you with some of the challenges that I'm having? Will you be able to help me be a soundboard? Can you help me? And they have been invaluable in being able to do that. So your network is composite of mentors, a learning diversity, people from different kinds of themes. If I look at my career from moving from home science to communication, filmmaking, moving from there to running a social consulting firm, teaching, and then now into farming, a lot of this has happened because diversity in my network helped me learn the next phase of what I wanted to do and how I wanted to apply the skill. And of course, inspiring peers and contacts. Reflecting often. You cannot reflect alone. Yes, you can to a certain extent, but again, mentors and peers with whom you can reflect and say, this went wrong and I think this is why it went wrong. A soundboard that can work with you on it. Very crucial tool. And I think decluttering and focusing again is a very crucial tool. And we'll talk about this because I saw in our poll that many of you had a challenge with being able to commit. So I'm trying to understand if that's what this is. So declutter and focus, do it as often as you need. Everything, remember, does not have to be continued. And I meet a lot of entrepreneurs who feel very guilty that, I set this up, I started it, but really I've reached a dead end and I can't take it further, but I can't quit either. The guilt of quitting, the guilt of having failed and having let something go is very deep. And very often I work with young entrepreneurs especially, and sometimes seasoned entrepreneurs, to go through this guilt of changing your mind. There need not be. Change is inevitable. And in fact, an innovative mind must change, must find the next lever with which to be able to build on. So these are just some of the tools that I find very useful when you're trying to rethink about where you need to apply your skill. Remember that the skills that we have are just the foundation of what we want to do. How you apply that skill is really where the innovation comes, because innovation is about creating value. So you can only create value when you have a problem statement, you have an opportunity that you can see clearly and a solution to it, and where you can apply your special skill in order to be able to make something meaningful out of that. I want to close by sharing this fabulous paragraph from a book that I was reading recently by Phil Knight. It is a memoir of his life and journey in building Nike from a little startup, literally in his basement room, or in fact, he had an outhouse kitchen in an old house with his parents, and from there he built it into a multi-billion-dollar brand. And if there's one book that I encourage you to read just to get inspiration, I read it very often, is Shoe Dog. You must read it. It's just brilliant. I want to just close with this one thought, because I feel he defines what an entrepreneur, innovative entrepreneur really is. And his quest for growth is just amazingly brilliant. He says when he was asked, what can you leave behind as a thought for young people starting their careers? He said, I tell men and women in their mid-20s not to settle for a job or a profession or even a career. Seek a calling. A calling is really something that you know deeply inside yourself is pulling you, even though it may not be very clear what it is. And if you read the book, you will see why he says that. Seek a calling. Even if you don't know what that means, seek it. If you're following your calling, the fatigue will be easier to bear. The disappointments will become fuel. The highs will be nothing like you've ever felt before. I really strongly encourage you to please read this book. I feel that many of us who are looking for answers in, okay, what should I do next, will find many, many, many invaluable gems in Phil Knight's work and life and thinking process. He works with a philosophy that is so deeply grounded, in being able to take one day at a time, but building a vision that I think you will find it very valuable. So rounding off back again, what is innovation in life and career? It's really about keeping the search going, seeking to find ways to apply the skills and the experience that you have to the most purposeful value that you can believe in creating for yourself and for others. And when you find that link, that's really the magic. And I'm pretty certain that that link exists for each one of us. It's really about making sure that you don't stop the seeking too early, and of course, keep experimenting. So with that, I want to thank you all for giving me this time. Thank you to the team at the Maharashtra Institute of Technology. I can be reached on any of these medium. I'm very active on Twitter as well. Please do drop me a note. I'd love to stay in touch, love to be able to help if I can in your journey. And if any of these thoughts are of use, then would love to have a follow-up conversation if required. So with that, Priya, I hope I've not extended it too much. I'm going to hand it back to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Parvathi. No, it's not been an extension. I think we could just keep on listening more to your beautiful story ahead. Do you want to take this few minutes to take care of the poll results which you were mentioning, the investing in prototype and the commit to implementation, and then I'll move on to the other questions.
Sure. Can you just show me that once again?
Yeah, sure. So essentially, we had 38% of people finding investing in prototyping and an equal percentage finding committing to implementation as most challenging versus seeking inspiration. And then lastly was reflecting on outcomes.
So one of the thoughts that I had parked there for us to come back to in terms of questions were those two, investing in prototyping and committing to implementation seems to be where the challenge is for many people. I'm curious to understand what the challenge there is, and anyone who's willing to share or maybe type in if that's how you are engaging, then what is the challenge over there? What do you find as the issue there? And if you can help me see that, so I can see some of the Q&A quickly coming in. I will perhaps just answer live to some of these questions. Is that all right, Priya?
Yes, please feel free.
Okay.
I can in fact take the first question.
Yeah. I'll take, many people are afraid to buy veggies from the open market in this epidemic. Is this situation, how are you running your operations? It's a great question because it all comes back to credibility. And this is the first question that is there on the list, Anik Tambe. Anik, I have over a period of time built a brand. The brand is very often, it's still a young company. My Fresh Harvest, which is my agriculture company, is linked very much to me. And I do personally, I spent a lot of time on that and building the brand. That I very actively spend time on social media, sharing what we are doing. Here is what we are putting into the soil. This is what we are working on. This is the animals on our farm. This is how I'm producing. This is the harvest that will happen over a period of time. A lot of communication goes out to my market. And it took me many years. Believe me, I've spent time. I've probably been the only woman up at 4 o'clock in the mandi with all the drivers trying to sell the produce that I had grown. So how do you sell good quality organic produce? And there's been a lot of learning on that. So one of the reasons, one of the outcomes of that was that as we went into the lockdown, people started looking for healthy veggies a lot more. That is interesting. So just as much as people are afraid to buy veggies from the open market, the demand for credible, clean, safe veggies has gone up. It's a paradox. So we actually fit into that. And the channels that I provide serve through are direct to home, farm to table, many collaborations that we have with people who are bringing produce into the homes directly. And the marketing helps because they are able to go back and say, okay, so where is this produce coming from? And they are able to assess that. So some amount of linkage to where it is coming from has helped us deal with that. Meetwan, how do you see the growth for startups in the arts and culture realm, keeping inside the current new normal of life? I mean, new normal of life. Okay, Meetwan, I'm seeing that happen. My son has just graduated. He's a communications graduate. He mastered in film production. He's currently in LA because he's got a year permission to work in the US following his undergrad. And it's amazing that we are seeing so much of an opening of online. So he's being able to edit from his own studio at home, working on his computer. There's a huge change in the way production is happening. You'll see that in a lot of, in output. What is interesting is collaborations. When things are getting locked down, you can see that there's a lot of more collaboration happening because people are wanting to get out. So I think in the art space, in the culture realm, this is going to be brilliant. It's chaos, problem, all of this is great for aesthetic interpretation, poetic interpretation. I think we're going to see a huge new growth coming out of that. Sachin, how do you identify when to quit and when to persist? Great question. For innovation, I think that's a very large challenge. You can keep going on behind something because you feel you shouldn't quit, or you feel that we haven't reached that point as yet. If I just do a little bit more, I will arrive at success. But I think, and sometimes it's instinct. There's a lot of data that will tell you, your data about where your results are, your data about your expenses, all of that can tell you a particular answer. But as an entrepreneur, I think at the end of the day, the answer comes in your gut. You know intuitively that you've reached the end of a curve. The products, the services that you've designed are not fitting the market anymore. And either you have to bring in a lot of investment and then move forward, or you can't move forward. Those kinds of signals are very important to listen to because they are telling you whether there's a market that's ready or not. Do you have the energy to discover a new market or not? Do you feel that your energy is completely burnt out and trying to just keep the operations going and you're not finding enough time for inspiration? That is not the same as quitting. That is a challenge with not having spent enough time to build out a team, perhaps, right? So I would suggest that one of the things that you really need to do as an entrepreneur when building a journey out is to definitely have a host of mentors, people who support you, who know the challenges that you're going through, who can see the problem dispassionately from you and can tell you, well, this is not about quitting. This is about finding your team. Let me help you solve this problem. You will get your energy back, right? So no direct answer to that, but I have to say that that's a very, a critical area. A lot of us struggle with that. Having mentors, having a capability to reflect and then separate out where the problem might be could be very useful. Anonymous attendee says, the value of the problem can be validated only when the prototype has been in hands of the user. Yes, this is where most of the ideas fail. How to get people to work with you on your idea, come up with prototype with little or no resources? Great question. It's especially especially in the context of of a product, assuming that you're trying to build out a product, let's say. There are a lot of very good labs today. There are prototype labs. I know that there is, for certain in Bangalore, there are a few very good prototype labs. With the government of India having invested in tinkering labs are providing open resources for innovators to come in and implement ideas over there. If it's a product and it needs some engineering work, there are laboratories. Look for them. Every innovation hub has those now. Startup Hub has it. The Atal Yojana has a lot of the universities that have set up such laboratories to have that. If it's a service, then you really want to collaborate. You want to collaborate with others who are meeting your kinds of customers and see if you can piggyback on that. More discussion perhaps we can do directly. Okay, great. So I think we've gone through some of the broad questions. Priya, did you want to ask any specific ones?
Right. So thank you for answering all the questions that were shared on the live medium. I'm going to circle back to your first slide pretty much, which says that no impact, no innovation. So beautifully captured in just 4 words, right? And really powerfully, I think they're worth remembering for anybody who's still new on the journey to innovation. At what stage in your career did you realize that you are making an impact, and then possibly that that an innovator is born now?
I think, like I was sharing that example of the telecommunications company, those were very insightful projects to me personally. They created a lot of growth. As I was helping these business people, engineers, work with their problems, just facilitating them through it. As a facilitator, I felt a great sense of satisfaction that I had helped them provoke their thinking enough for them to have sought an insight deeper than the data that they could see. And when we were able to, cross all this data, all of this challenge, come up with an insight, convert the insight into a patent and actually file it, the sense of achievement was fantastic. I felt, wow, I've really finally managed to be able to bring some purpose to the ability to communicate and to find, understand business and bring it all together as a facilitator. I think that's when it started to really make sense to me. And in fact, in some of those reflections is when I decided that this is really what I want to now be doing with my company. And when I set up Innovation Alchemy, I was completely focused on facilitating that kind of innovation.
Sure. Thank you. Do you think it takes like the first 20 or possibly 30 years of life only to figure out, who we are and what you would really like to do? Eventually in line with, loving and also loving what we really want to do.
I think that's a generational question, to be very honest. I think we as a generation, growing up in the 80s, had more of that challenge because there was a very defined path forward for young people. You could either become an engineer or a doctor, or there were very defined roles, and they were very clear why we were doing those roles. We had to go build out our life. We had to go, set up home. So we went through a particular channel. But I think today's youth, all the way from probably the millennial generation, has had far more opportunity to experiment, to try different things, to do different subjects, to study in a combination of subjects that didn't exist. Many students today are doing international schools. The opportunity with the internet is just amazing. So I would not say that for today's generation, for younger people, it's not, 10, 15, 20 years. You could be very clear about what you want to do right out of college simply because you have learned so much from the available resources, which we didn't have. And so we took some time to do it, right? So I'm going to say that it's a very individual thing, but definitely I would say generational as well.
Great, thank you. I also want to go back to that slide where you were, driving the tractor. Someday I also want to drive that tractor, I guess in my own organic farm. So are you a first generation farmer? Is anybody else in the family, remotely into farming?
Well, my grandfather on my father's side, he retired. He was in the government, and then he was in the British government, and then in the Indian government. And when he retired, he took to farming, and he had a small farm, and he grew. And I only came to know him when he'd already retired. I was only born then. So I remember going to his farm, but he was for a very short duration, he did that, but as retirement. So in many ways, I mean, I am a first generation farmer. I chose very consciously to invest in it, and everybody in the family always says, farming, like really, with so much education, why do you want to go back there? But in the last 7 years that I've been working, 5-7 years I've been working on this thought. Look at the difference today. So many people come in to say, I really want to get into farming. I think agriculture is the next one. And I personally believe agriculture is the next wave of innovation application in India. Not only in India, across the world. And the epidemic has shown us why it's so critical to know where your food comes from, who is growing what, how nutritionally diverse is your food, much more than the quantity and other measures that were there. This is going to be the decade of agriculture innovation. And I'm just glad that, somehow I had, some link to that thought and was able to invest in it early enough.
Lovely.
But you can drive the tractor for sure.
Of course, positively. So what is the team size that brings your vision, your passion to reality, and of course, related gains as well? What is the team size, the strength?
Team size strength. In the agriculture business, we are about 10-12 of us, because this is, I would say, in that business, this is still early years, and I have to expand the team now. It takes 4-5 years to be able to at least get your hands on, to understand what agriculture is, and it took me many years to understand seasonality, errors, this, that, and the other. We are now starting to expand. I think a good, if you're able to expand into 2 or 3 different revenue streams in organic production, then a 15-20 member team size for about maybe a 5 to 10 acre farm, including farm team plus marketing team plus perhaps somebody in sales, is a good team size to work with. But that of course depends on what you're intending to do there. Consulting, on the other hand, you can create impact with very few people. It's really dependent on the quality of people that you have. So with a 5-6 member core team that works together, and then a group of people that come in as panel experts or subject matter experts on projects as we require them. It's a big network of subject matter experts that we have now over a period of time built. That's great, and we are able to do a lot with that. I'm personally a big believer in keeping things lean and not making things very large. With leanness comes agility and the ability to stay nimble as the markets change, and I think that's my thought there.
Great, thank you so much. So to the audience, for more questions, do reach out to us offline on LinkedIn. A round of thanks to our participants for joining us today, and special thanks to our guest speaker, Parvathi Menon, for her time and the value-add takeaways from her journey. We encourage you to connect with us via our social channels to know more about the MIT ID Innovation Program and the upcoming webinars and online courses. With this, I'd like to invite you all to our next webinar on Wednesday, Friday, 3rd July 2020. Our guest speaker is Mr. Anay Pathak, Senior Technology Consultant, Data Protection Solutions, Dell Technologies Global Alliance, who will be speaking about driving innovation with emerging technologies. Please register in case you haven't yet. For those interested in enrolling for the 1-year course, we have last few seats left for the second cohort of this prestigious program that will fast track your career path. So log on to www.mitidinnovation.com to kickstart your innovation journey with a diverse set of co-innovators and thought leaders to mentor you like Ms. Parvathi Menon. So thank you once again, Parvathi, and thank you to the lovely audience. Stay connected, stay safe, and please keep innovating every day.
Thank you.
Pleasure, thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.